political commentator here at CTV, Scott Reid. Good morning to you, Scott. So what questions will be asked of Trudeau today? What are you listening for?
Well, I think what we're going to hear is follow up to where the discussion was yesterday with the senior staff, and prior to that, in particular with the head of CSIS. You know, the head of CSIS sort of shocked this inquiry, certainly surprised it when he presented a piece of paper that said that, you know, they had grave concerns. And then when PMO staff were asked about that yesterday, the grave concerns, I should say, with respect to the integrity of the election, the involvement, the degree, and the rigor with which China in particular are trying to interfere in the democratic elections in 2021, 2019. And when PMO staff were confronted with that, they said, well, yeah, we got briefed. We got briefed in an appropriate way on that. However, what was in writing in that memo was not provided to us in an oral brief from the head of CSIS. So we can't really react to that. And if you're asking us, why didn't we respond? Why didn't the Prime Minister respond to such a grave, stark warning? Well, we didn't receive that warning. And so the Prime Minister is going to get asked about that in particular. He'll get asked about the broad scope of interference, why he didn't act in specific instances, particularly in Fort York with the MP Han Dong, in Toronto, and you'll see that. But I think this follow up on this CSIS memorandum, what the CSIS director briefed them on, I think that's going to be probably your key moment here today.
Okay, and while you're mentioning the CSIS director, he's been called back for more testimony. How unusual is that, Scott?
Quite. Well, I don't want to overstate it. It's a direct consequence of this circumstance. So on paper, you have something that the Globe and Mail and other media outlets take and say, my word, this is a black and white warning that there is interference. Why on earth didn't people at the political level act? Was it because they were disinterested in it? And then, of course, you hear people at the political level saying, well, it wasn't presented to us. And I can just tell you from having worked in a prime minister's office, that's entirely possible. You are entirely in the hands of, the briefings you receive. It's also far from clear that there was any suggestion that anything ought to be done or any recommendation or urging from national security officials. So because of those question marks, to some degree, those contradictions, they're going to want to hear from the head of CSIS again. And in particular, he will be asked, what the Prime Minister will be asked today, what did he say to the Prime Minister? What did he not say? What did he leave out? And why did he leave that out?
So first up this morning at 9:30 Eastern, approximately, so about 25 minutes from now, Scott, we're going to hear from Karina Gould. Why is her testimony crucial? Remind us again of what her role in this, and let's, of course, also talk about the Minister of Defence and Dominic LeBlanc, also expected to testify today before the Prime Minister.
All of these ministers, of course, have some responsibility for the national security apparatus, or did at the time. And so they are going to be asked for, their recollections of what they were briefed by the officials that come up to them, what they in turn might have said, either to the Prime Minister in their responsibilities as ministers of the Crown, or to their officials as they reacted to the information that they were provided, or possibly not, and what, if any, information they also shared at the political level with the political apparatus. Now, whenever asked about this, so far, and you heard this from PMO officials yesterday, those that were acting during the 2019 and 2021 campaign in their capacity as campaign officials. They'd stepped away from government. If they'd been in government, they did receive security clearances. They were cleared to take security briefings. And when they were asked, oh, and did you pass this on to candidate Han Dong, to others in the political operation, they said no. These ministers will be asked the same thing. Did you keep it essentially within the lines that you were supposed to keep this information? So watch for that.
So, Scott, finally, my last question for you this morning then. There's so much going on. And for our viewers who are wondering, ultimately, what are we looking for here? Your answer is what?
I think two things. One, for those that are coming at this with a pure partisan interest, They're going to be looking to see if there's anything that hints at inappropriate indifference on the part of the government. Did the government, because perhaps it felt that it was a beneficiary of some of this interference, did it turn a blind eye to it? I have to say, despite all the smoke and light and what we heard from Mr. O'Toole, I don't believe there's any evidence of that to date. And we'll see how the Prime Minister handles himself. The more fundamental thing, take the pure politics, take the politics of the moment off the table. You have to ask yourself, does any of this leave you feeling more confident about our ability to identify, intercept, and frustrate efforts on the part of China, Iran, Russia, to interfere with our democratic processes, to interfere with the party processes that are relatively open in our country, and they're valued for being open. But how are we going to track that in the future? What are we going to do about that? And how do we make certain that we do not allow those foreign actors and those bad actors to interfere with with our campaigns and with our political process? So, I mean, that is the fundamental takeaway, and that's what we'll hear from the justice when all this is done.
Got it. Scott, thanks for that. And just a note to our viewers, we just popped up a live shot. We see Karina Gould arriving. She will be first up today. Scott Reid, thanks so much. And a reminder, we're going to have special coverage of the Prime Minister's testimony at the public inquiry into foreign interference. We are expecting to hear from the PM around 3 o'clock Eastern Time this afternoon.